Welcome back. We were talking about understanding suicide and the complications around it. So it's almost like people believe, right? They say, "Oh, he was all fine, she was all fine," and everything looked very normal. And suddenly we hear this news. But what we fail to understand is there are so many things that goes behind, and the person would have definitely thought, planned, prepared for it. So what do you think that that should set the narrative right in terms of understanding what is suicide itself?
Yeah, I think when we say narratives, we have to think about who are the storytellers, who are the ones who are communicating the narrative, and we talk about the media. And so many times we see reports like, oh, the parents said no to giving a mobile phone, or parents said no, we will not get your motorbike, and this child went and attempted suicide, which I've never actually seen a real life case like that. And if the reporting is just on the basis of that is selective storytelling. When it's never one demand that was not met and the child went and did something like that. I think those kinds of stories become like then everybody's ideas of, oh, this is why, this is what is happening, and we forget that this has been a problem for as long as humankind has been around. It's not that in our generation as students this was not a problem, or that in our parents' generation this was not a problem, but every generation believes that it is this generation which is very weak mentally or is very demanding.
The previous one was always better.
The previous one was always resilient, which is not true. If you look at statistics itself, it is like the WHO report was 10 years ago, and that time it said India was the worst, and since then it has increased. So it is not that 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago the situation was better and now this generation is better or weaker or whatever you want to call it. So we have to really look at the fact that we don't make it a caricature.
True. And you should also never attribute things to a particular generation. I really hate when people say Gen Zs are always like this, and they are too sensitive. They can take random decisions, which is actually not true. I mean, these kind of people who were very disorganized or not being able to stick to rules and regulations, which are typical Gen Z characteristics, they were found even before.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so bad to, like you said, caricate one particular group of people or generation, and more so when it comes to a sensitive matter like suicide, to say that this generation is always like
there's
this.
no solution to it then, because you were born in one particular generation. There is no solution to it then.
You're deemed to be this
exactly.
way. Yeah.
And then we are saying that all of the wisdom lies with the older generation, which is not again true at all. I thought I'd ask you one question, because one thing that often comes up, and because you are the head of a department at an academic institution, is that institutions don't want to talk about it. And especially if there is a attempt or a completed or a successful attempt of suicide by somebody, most often it is seen that institutes don't want to talk about it. Or at least the first thing that the institute wants to do is to say that we were not responsible for it, there were some personal reasons for it. So what do you think is the responsibility of an institution? Firstly, from the point of view of making sure that the environment is supportive, and secondly, if such an unfortunate incident happens,
how should they respond? I mean, I'm so glad you asked me this question, because I think this is true not only with academic institutions, but I think this is probably a scenario that you would see in most of the organizations. If at all there is an attempt and successful attempt of suicide, the first thing that the organization does is to back off and say we are not responsible for this. And I see a reason for them to behave that way. One is definitely the stigma, because people will start attributing and saying, oh, this seems to be there seems to be something dark in this organization, something is not okay, or the management must have done something, and so on and so on. So the way society looks at it, the way people start spinning stories around,
Absolutely,
I think that is what most of the organizations are afraid of. So therefore they want to either hush it or say, maybe this is something that to do with their personal life and has got nothing to do with our organization.
And I understand that as an immediate response. They are going into damage control.
Correct.
But then after the matter has settled, what then stops us from doing anything about it?
So that is the first response, right? The second thing, what happens is most of the organizations remain clueless. Now, what do I do? As an organization, as a management, should I go and talk to the family members? If I have to reach out to them, how do I console?
Correct.
So that awkward thing is what I think most of the management would want to avoid. So they would want to ignore or be silent completely. That's the second round of response that most of the organizations have. Even more scarier is the organizations would never want to talk about it to their own employees.
Correct.
They would have lost their own person in the organization. It could be a student, it could be a teacher, it could be an employee, it could be whoever. But the organization never wants to reach out to others.
They want to erase them from as if they never existed.
Yeah, they think being silent will erase everything and people will forget. But they don't know that it actually seeps in and people absorb it in a very different way, and that can damage individual mental health as well as the organization's environment. So I think that's the most dangerous thing that anybody could do. I think one way to deal with this is organizations should come forward and release a statement saying that we are very unfortunate to hear this, or some response from the organization which is sensitive and acceptable, which sends a message to the family members, their own employees, and to the society at large. I think that's how to go about. Do you have any experience?
I mean, I've lost clients, unfortunately. In cases when they were a student, pretty much, what you said happened. But that time I saw, the students rising up and saying, no, we want to acknowledge this person's passing. They have organized memorials, and I think in that situation, at least because the students came forward and said, no, we should at least talk about why it happened. There was no, the institute was not being blamed, but the institute was very hesitant to acknowledge it and do something about it on their premises.
Right.
So I think once the students came forward, a memorial was organized. They all got to speak about their experiences with the person who had passed on. I think more than anything else, it is about the people who survive, right?
I know.
And the impact on their mental health. And a space like that is extremely important for them to be able to come together, remember this person, share their grief with each other.
And that's one way to cope, isn't it?
That is exactly what you would do if a loved one in your family passes away. So why would you deny, students or colleagues the opportunity to grieve and mourn in their own way? And many of them, even said that, we didn't know if it was our place to go to the funeral.
Correct.
Because that is something for family. Correct. And especially when it is a death like this, people are even more scared to attend. So I think giving a space like this to have people come together and speak about it, especially if it can be facilitated by a psychologist, would be even better. But even if you can't, just allowing people and having like a authority figure saying that yes, we are allowing this space to be here, and as an institution we are expressing our grief about this person's passing. It at least legitimizes the person's existence and allows people to share their grief and talk about it.
True.